Self-love makes you aware of the patterns, the red flags, the ways you used to silence your intuition just to keep the peace. But peace built on self-abandonment is a lie. Real peace begins the moment you stop asking others for permission to exist. The moment you stand rooted in who you are, even if it means standing alone. They can't reach you in that place. Because manipulation only works when you doubt yourself. Guilt only works when you're disconnected from your truth. But self-love connects you to your wisdom, your strength, your inner voice that always knew better, even when you couldn't listen. And the more connected you become, the less influence they have. Every act of self-love, no matter how small, is a declaration that you're done being a character in their drama. You're building your own stage now. And on that stage, there is no room for falsehood, no room for control, no room for anything less than the truth of who you are and who you're becoming. There comes a moment in every survivor's journey when you realize that not every battle deserves your presence. Not every provocation needs your energy. A narcissist will push every emotional button you have, not because they want to understand you, but because they want to control you. And in that moment, when your instinct is to defend, to explain, to react, you must pause. Because that pause, that sacred silence, is the beginning of your power. You see, narcissists are addicted to your attention. Whether you're adoring them or arguing with them, it doesn't matter. In their mind, as long as they're the center of your emotional world, they win. But when you stop reacting, when your face no longer changes, when your voice no longer rises, when your peace becomes louder than your pain, they don't know what to do with you. It's not silence to manipulate. It's silence to heal, and they feel it. They want to be the sun in your sky. They want every decision you make to orbit around them. And when you decide to step out of that gravitational pull, to detach emotionally, they begin to unravel. Indifference confuses them. It strips them of the script they've rehearsed their whole life. They expect rage. They expect tears. But they don't expect you to stop caring. Indifference isn't cold-hearted. It's the final act of self-respect. It says, I no longer need to prove my worth to someone who's committed to misunderstanding it. It's not about pretending they didn't hurt you. It's about refusing to let that hurt define you anymore. When you withhold your energy, your validation, your emotional reaction, you take back what they were never entitled to. That shift in energy, that quiet reclaiming of yourself, is often more powerful than any confrontation. Because narcissists thrive in chaos. They stir the pot and then step back to watch you boil. But when your water stays still, when you remain calm, when you give them nothing but a steady, unshaken presence, they can't feed off you anymore. They'll try harder at first. That's what they do. They'll bait you with insults. They'll play the victim. They'll test every boundary you've ever built. But you don't flinch. You don't chase. You don't explain. Because now you understand. Your power isn't in reacting. It's in choosing not to. And in that space of emotional neutrality, something beautiful begins to happen. You start to hear yourself again, your own voice, your own truth. The voice that was once drowned out by chaos is now clear, centered, and whole. And as that voice grows louder, the narcissist's influence fades into the background. Indifference, real indifference, doesn't come from spite. It comes from healing. It's not the absence of feeling, it's the presence of self, a return to your own soul, a knowing that you no longer need them to see you because you finally see yourself. There is a sacred power in the word no, not a harsh, defensive no, but a calm, rooted, unwavering no that comes from deep within. That kind of no is not just a rejection, it's a declaration that your time, your energy, and your spirit are no longer up for negotiation. And nothing terrifies a narcissist more than someone who refuses to be an open door. Narcissists don't ask for control, they assume it. They believe they're entitled to your compliance, to your availability, to your silence. Boundaries challenge that belief. When you start saying, "This doesn't work for me," or "I won't accept being spoken to like that," you're not just drawing a line in the sand, you're tearing down the stage they've been performing on. They'll call you difficult. They'll say you're selfish. They'll accuse you of being cruel or uncaring. But none of that is true. What's really happening is they're watching their power slip away. Because boundaries dismantle the illusion that they're in charge. Every time you hold the line, you're teaching them that you're no longer available for their games. And it won't be easy at first. Setting boundaries with a narcissist is like teaching someone who speaks entitlement that the language of respect is non-negotiable. They'll test you. They'll push back harder. But that's not a sign to retreat. It's proof that you're doing something right. You are breaking the unspoken contract that said their needs come before your well-being. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors you get to open and close. They don't shut people out. They keep your peace in. And once you understand that, you stop feeling guilty for protecting yourself. You stop apologizing for needing space. You stop shrinking just to avoid confrontation. You realize that anyone who's offended by your boundaries was benefiting from your lack of them. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to fight to be respected. Sometimes the most powerful boundary is simply not showing up where you are disrespected. It's the quiet strength of walking away from the table when love is no longer being served. It's trusting that you don't have to explain your worth to someone committed to ignoring it. There is clarity in boundaries. They reveal who is willing to grow with you and who is only ever there to control you. They act like a mirror, reflecting back the truth that was always there, that your needs, your feelings, and your limits are valid, that you are not here to carry someone else's emotional load at the expense of your own sanity. Boundaries may provoke the narcissist, but they will protect your soul. They will reshape the dynamics in your life. They are not a sign of rebellion. They are a sign of awakening, of no longer bending to be loved, but standing to be respected. There's a moment when the fog begins to lift, when you stop questioning your own memory and start questioning theirs. That moment is called clarity, and it often comes when you begin to do something they never expected you to do. Hold them accountable. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with calm, clear truth. A truth they can't manipulate no matter how hard they try. Narcissists are masters of rewriting reality. They twist timelines, deny obvious facts, and weaponize your empathy against you. They rely on your silence, your confusion, your need for harmony. But when you start naming what actually happened, when you say, "That's not what you said last week," or "This doesn't match what you told me before," you are shining a light on the cracks in their mask. And they will squirm, they will dodge, deflect, blame and shame. They'll say you're too sensitive or that you're imagining things, but the truth doesn't need permission to exist, it just is. And when you stand in that truth calmly and consistently, you dismantle the fragile world they've built around their ego. Because accountability asks the one question a narcissist never wants to answer: why? Why do you say one thing and do another? Why do you expect grace but give none? Why do the rules change when it suits you? These questions don't require confrontation. They require consistency. And nothing destabilizes a narcissist faster than someone who remembers the details they thought they could erase. You don't have to yell to hold someone accountable. You just have to stop pretending not to notice. You just have to resist the urge to smooth things over to keep the peace. Because peace without honesty is just a performance. And performances are what narcissists depend on. Yours, not theirs. The moment you stop participating in that performance, you stop playing their game. Accountability strips away the fantasy. It shows them that you see past the charm, the excuses, the carefully curated image. It reminds them that real relationships require honesty, humility, and repair. And those are currencies they rarely possess, so they try to intimidate or guilt you into backing down. But your calm truth is louder than their chaos. It's not about proving them wrong, it's about proving yourself right. Proving that what you felt, saw, and experienced was real, that you're no longer gaslighting yourself just to preserve their comfort, that you've stopped carrying the burden of their behavior on your back because the weight of their denial is no longer yours to bear. Accountability may not change them, but it will change you. It will clear the fog. It will return your voice. It will anchor you in reality when they try to pull you back into confusion. And with every honest word you speak, their illusion begins to fade, revealing not who they pretended to be, but who they've always been. There's something profoundly unsettling to a narcissist about your glow, especially when they are no longer the source of it. When you start rising, healing, succeeding without their approval, it confronts the lie they've told themselves, that you need them to be whole. But your success without their validation doesn't just bother them, it destabilizes them. They see your growth as a threat, not because you're doing well, but because you're doing well without them. Because now your light is no longer feeding their ego, it's exposing their irrelevance. And for someone who once positioned themselves as the center of your universe, being on the outside looking in is unbearable. Narcissists want you small, manageable, dependent. That way they can keep control, keep superiority, keep you questioning your worth. But when you stop asking for permission to shine, when you no longer wait for them to clap before you celebrate yourself, they lose grip on the illusion that they made you. They didn't build you. They just occupied space while you were figuring yourself out. And now that you're stepping into your power, now that you're speaking your truth, taking up space, living your purpose, they're left with the echo of a role they can no longer play because your self-worth is no longer tied to their recognition. You'll notice they don't celebrate your wins. They may downplay them, ignore them, or worse, try to sabotage them. Not because your success is wrong, but because it's proof they never had as much power over you as they believed. And that realization cuts deeper than any confrontation ever could. Success to them is only tolerable when they can take credit for it. But when you start succeeding by trusting yourself, investing in your own healing, surrounding yourself with people who lift you instead of drain you, it sends a loud message that they were never the source of your greatness. They were just a distraction from it. Your growth reminds them of everything they refused to do. Your courage to evolve, to face your pain, to step out of the story they wrote for you, it exposes the stagnancy in their own life. Because while they were busy trying to control the narrative, you were busy rewriting your destiny. And the most powerful part, you don't need them to see it. You're not chasing validation anymore. You're not explaining your choices. You're not shrinking for approval. You're just rising. On your terms, in your time, in your truth. And that, more than anything, is what makes them miserable. There is a kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shout, doesn't beg, doesn't try to prove. It simply is. That power is your inner peace. And to a narcissist, it is maddening because they thrive in noise, in drama, in confusion, in emotional entanglement. But when you begin to heal, when your nervous system calms, when your heart no longer leaps at their chaos, they feel it and they hate it. Your peace says, you no longer control the temperature of my world. You're not thrown off by their mood swings, not lured into their baiting, not broken down by their silence. That stillness you've worked so hard to build, the kind that comes after long nights of crying, after the unraveling of old stories, after therapy, journaling, prayer. That stillness is what they cannot stand, because they can't reach you there. That sacred space you've carved out for yourself, where your worth is not up for debate, where your emotions are grounded, where your joy is not reactive. It's inaccessible to them, and it leaves them spinning. They don't know how to manipulate someone who's no longer emotionally hooked. They'll try to poke, provoke, ignite, they'll toss emotional grenades your way, hoping for a reaction. But when you respond with calm, with silence, or with complete disengagement, it disrupts their strategy. It reveals the emptiness behind their performance. Because if you're not playing your part, the whole act falls apart. Inner peace isn't passive, it's disciplined. It takes work to stay rooted when someone is trying to pull you into chaos. It takes strength to not defend yourself against lies, to not chase after closure, to not match their emotional intensity. But that restraint, that calm, that refusal to be dragged down, it is your liberation. They call it cold. They'll say you're distant, heartless, disconnected, but that's projection. What they're really saying is, I can no longer access your energy the way I used to. And that's the truth. Because your peace creates a boundary more powerful than words. A boundary that doesn't need explanation. It just is. There's nothing more threatening to someone who feeds off your pain than your refusal to suffer for them anymore. When your healing becomes louder than their dysfunction, when your calm becomes your shield, they're left facing the one thing they fear most, their own inability to control you. Your peace doesn't punish them, it frees you. It's not about revenge. It's about release. The kind of release that comes when you stop needing chaos to feel connection, stop needing noise to feel noticed. When you become your own sanctuary, their chaos no longer feels like home. There comes a time when you get tired, not just physically, but spiritually, of explaining yourself to someone who never intended to understand you. That exhaustion, that deep soul weariness is your spirit telling you the truth, that your worth is not something you have to argue for, that the more you try to justify your needs, your boundaries, your choices to a narcissist, the more power you give away. Narcissists are not seeking clarity, they are seeking control. Every time you explain yourself, they twist your words. Every time you try to be reasonable, they shift the narrative. They're not listening to understand, they're listening to find a weakness, an opening, a point of leverage. Your explanations become tools in their manipulation, and your need to be understood becomes their playground. You think if you just say it the right way, they'll finally get it. That if you're calm enough, kind enough, clear enough, the truth will sink in. But that moment never comes. Because they don't want truth, they want dominance. And the more you try to win them over with logic or vulnerability, the more they tighten their grip. There is immense power in withholding the explanation, in simply saying, this is what I need, and letting that be enough. It's a declaration that you're done negotiating your value, that your decisions no longer require their stamp of approval, that your why belongs to you and you alone. It's not about shutting down or being dismissive. It's about standing in your authority. When you stop explaining, you stop inviting them into the intimate space of your mind and heart. You stop giving them ammunition. You stop asking for what they're unwilling or incapable of giving, validation. They may accuse you of being evasive. They'll say you're difficult, unreasonable, selfish. But those are just the echoes of a system that only functioned when you were on the defensive. When you remove yourself from that dynamic, when you choose self-trust over external approval, they lose access to the power they once held over you. You are not obligated to prove your intentions. You are not required to defend your peace. And you are not responsible for managing their discomfort when you no longer bend. This is what reclaiming yourself looks like. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in quiet, unshakable knowing. When you stop explaining yourself, you start elevating yourself. You begin to move with purpose instead of permission. You realize that your energy is sacred, and that trying to convince someone of your worth is the fastest way to forget it yourself. There is no louder statement, no deeper act of self-respect than walking away in silence. Not storming out, not screaming, not slamming doors, just leaving. Because when you walk away from a narcissist, you're not just leaving a person, you're leaving the entire illusion they built around your connection. And that quiet exit strikes where their ego is most fragile. Narcissists depend on your presence. Your energy is their supply, your attention, your reactions, your need to fix, to explain, to make things right. As long as you stay, even in pain, even in conflict, they believe they still have a grip on your soul. But when you go, fully, finally, without a scene, they realize they've lost something they can't control. They're not wounded by the loss of love. They are wounded by the loss of access. They crave the ability to affect your mood, to dictate your reality, to be the reason for your joy or your despair. So when you detach, when you disappear from their radar, when you stop answering the call to chaos, it shatters their illusion of power. You may expect rage, you may expect begging, you may even get silence, but behind it all is a storm. Because they never imagined a version of you that didn't orbit them. They never believed you'd find the strength to put yourself first, not because they told you to, but because you finally realized you deserved to. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't love them. It means you loved yourself enough to stop bleeding for someone who kept handing you the knife. It means you got tired of trying to explain your pain to someone who used it as fuel. It means you finally saw that your healing required distance, not discussion. They will try to pull you back, with guilt, with nostalgia, with false promises of change. But you've seen the pattern too many times. You know that going back only delays the peace that's waiting for you. You know that leaving isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And you carry that wisdom like armor. In walking away, you are teaching them the lesson they never wanted to learn. That people are not possessed, that love is not leverage, that when you misuse someone's heart enough times, eventually they learn to guard it. And when they do, there's no amount of manipulation that can break through. You don't need to prove a point. Your absence is the message. Your silence is the consequence. And your peace, finally reclaimed, is the final blow to everything they thought they had control over. There is a shift that happens when you begin to love yourself, not in theory, not just in words, but in practice. It's the moment you stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself. And when that shift takes root, the narcissist feels it like a tremor, because self-love is something they cannot mimic and cannot stand against. It makes you sovereign, and that sovereignty disrupts their control. When you truly love yourself, you stop looking for someone else to reflect your worth back to you. You stop negotiating your value in conversations that always leave you drained. You stop shrinking so someone else can feel big. Because self-love teaches you that your light isn't up for dimming. It's meant to shine, even if it blinds those who'd rather keep you in the dark. The narcissist loses grip the moment you start believing that your voice matters, that your feelings are valid, that your needs are not too much. They lose grip when you no longer accept crumbs and call it a feast, because self-love demands a seat at the table, not just a space in the corner. It teaches you to walk away from anything that asks you to abandon yourself to keep it alive. Self-love isn't loud. It's not boastful. It's quiet, steady, and unshakable. It's in the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening, in the way you soothe your own heart when it's aching, in the way you hold your boundaries, not with anger but with grace. That kind of love builds armor, not walls but protection, not fear but discernment. They'll call it selfish. They'll say you've changed. And you have, because when you stop handing over your joy for their approval, when you stop letting someone else narrate your story, they lose their role in your life. You become the author, the main character, the one who finally decided that being whole was more important than being accepted.